So here we're going to discuss the buyer representation agreement. This is the OREA Form 300. So what the buyer representation agreement is, it's an agreement between the buyer, yourself, and the brokerage, which is Remax Escarpment. It basically just highlights the type of representation that we're going to give you, the length of the contract, the properties that are being searched for, and whatnot. So when you look at the first section of the form itself, it's basically just going to highlight who the buyer is, your name, the brokerage representative. The brokerage representative is generally going to be the realtor you're using, which in this case is me. It specifies when the representation starts, when it expires, the geographical location that it covers, and the type of property that it covers. Now, when we talk about the geographical location, that can be as broad as any house in the Southern Ontario, right? It can be as narrow as a specific address. So if you want to enter into a buyer representation agreement just for a particular property, you're actually free to do that, and that basically captures the scope of it here in this section. Now, when we get into section 1 and 2 of the form, okay, it's going to describe a couple of things. So section 1 really just defines the terms that are being used in the rest of the document for clarity's sake. Section 2 describes the commission. Now, the commission is basically just an acknowledgement by the buyer that the listing brokerage will be paying the buyer brokerage a commission. This can be confusing, so it's important to note that in 99.9% of the cases, you as a buyer, the realtor services for you are free. So any commissions and any fees that are being paid are generally going to be paid by the seller and the seller's brokerage to the buyer's brokerage. This section also covers something called the holdover period. Okay, so the holdover period is basically the amount of time that a property is captured by this agreement after it expires. So a typical holdover period, for example, is going to be about 120 days. And basically what that means is if I show you a property if you can't then go and purchase that property within 120 days after this agreement expires. It basically just captures that I showed you that property and it's captured under this agreement for a further 120 days after the agreement expires. Section 3 describes the types of representations that are available to you and basically just acknowledges that you've been provided with the forms and the paperwork explaining those types of relationships. It also deals with an acknowledgement that there may be case of multiple representation, right? I could be representing you as your realtor, and maybe we're looking at a listing that's one of my listings. In that case, it would be multiple representation. This section really just describes that those cases are possible, and it describes the duties that I would owe to you in those cases. So those are the most important sections in this agreement. There's obviously a few more sections you can read through. Read through them. I've attached a blank version of the form to this email as well. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me.